Well, hello, everybody. My name is Darren, and I'm one of the marketing coordinators with the School of Health Sciences. It's my pleasure to welcome you to BCIT's School of Health Sciences information session for Prosthetics and Orthotics. First off, some housekeeping. I want to let you know how happy we are to see you, and thank you for attending our presentation today. Feel free to post your questions, comments into the chat during the presentation, and we'll do our best to address as many questions as we can near the end of the presentation in the Q&A segment. And one more thing, if possible, please keep your microphone and video turned off until the end of the presentation to reduce connectivity issues and interruptions, and that will be greatly appreciated. Just one thing to get done before we get going, I would like to acknowledge, BCIT would like to acknowledge our province of British Columbia is located on the homelands of 203 distinct Indigenous nations and cultures, with over 30 different languages and close to 60 unique dialects. And we ask all participants to reflect, acknowledge, and honor in their own way the First Nation land on which we live, work, and play. Excellent, thank you for that. So this evening's agenda is welcome and introductions, and we'll do a quick poll. We'll watch a prosthetics and orthotics video, and then we'll proceed with the presentation and program overviews. We'll have time for program advising, and we'll see how much time at the end for Q&A. Hopefully we'll get everyone's questions answered. So the first thing I'd like to do is present everyone with a poll. I'm going to move along now, and I will introduce Lawrence Schubert, who's the program head, and he can comment on the poll and start his presentation. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Darren, and welcome everyone. As mentioned, my name is Lawrence Schubert. I'm the program head for the Prosthetics and Orthotics program, and happy to have you all here to join us tonight. I graduated myself from this program back in 2010 and have been practicing as a certified prosthetist and involved in education ever since. It's an incredibly exciting and rewarding career, and I look forward to being able to share a little bit about the profession and our program over the next little bit here tonight. So what I'd like to do is share a video that one of our past graduates of our program created, and it provides a great overview of our profession and what it means to be a prosthetist or an orthotist. And whenever you like, you can cue up that video there.
Many people in our community require the use of prosthetic and orthotic treatment. A prosthetist provides treatment for patients with limb loss. This treatment includes the provision of an artificial limb, known as a prosthesis. An orthotist provides treatment for patients with physical impairments. This treatment includes the provision of an orthopedic brace, known as an orthosis. Both professions require patient assessments, fittings, and follow-up care as part of the treatment process.
I think an aspect of prosthetics orthotics that most people don't understand is that we're quite unique in the fact that we get to see a patient or a client from the very beginning of their treatment process, and you get to be influential and a part of the rehab team right through to the end. The really neat thing is that you make lifelong relationships with these people, so those patients become your patients for life, and so you see them ongoing. Even once the rest of the rehab team is gone, you're still involved with their care long term. And in fact, most amputees in particular consider their prosthetist their primary health care provider, the ones that they find a really important part of their care. And orthotically speaking, I think we have a very unique approach to patient care, and that again we see the whole picture from start to finish. We have the ability to modify that treatment program, to make adjustments, to intervene, and to make changes, and to go to the table with different types of options for them that are a really important part of taking them to the next level.
About 3.5 months ago, I had a skiing accident. They've prescribed me with this knee brace. The foot thing is basically allows me to walk as I would normally without an injury.
An undergraduate degree is a prerequisite to the 2-year diploma program, followed by a 2-year residency. A certification exam must be completed at the end of the residency to ensure qualification.
I like that right away we get our patient experience, and I also like that once a week we get to do rotations around the city so that we can, for instance, we shadow orthopedic surgeons, physiatrists, physiotherapists, and we get to see patients from a different perspective. So we get to see them from the physiotherapist perspective and from the surgeon perspective, which is interesting when you compare it to how we see it with our own prosthetists and orthotists.
Prosthetic and orthotic practitioners work closely with other healthcare professionals such as physiotherapists and orthopedic surgeons to promote the highest standard of patient care. The field also relies heavily on the support of technicians, who are also specially trained for the prosthetic and orthotic field.
As a technical instructor, I try to teach the complexity of the manufacturing side of our profession. I try to expose them to the vast array of materials and procedures involved so that they can take that as a working knowledge and be comfortable applying that to their patients.
Every part of it I love. There's the personal satisfaction of actually getting to make something and fabricate something. There's the satisfaction of getting to help somebody in their lives. There's the fact that it's kind of artistic and yet at the same time very engineer-like. Just literally everything about it makes me excited to come to work every single day.
It lets me keep up with the other people in my class, especially in PE, and be really good in goalie. And pretty much, yeah, it helps me do most of the things that acquire moving.
The prostheses, it allows me to do anything I want to do. That, to say, I cycle, I jog sometimes, I go going for long walks. Allows me to do my work. I'm on my feet most of the day. It allows me to live.
I would say that it's a creative science and an art that goes together, and you're basically using your knowledge of materials, and you're using your knowledge of biomechanics, you're using your knowledge of physics, but also interpersonal psychology and quality of life kinds of things. You're trying to create a device for somebody that they can actually use to improve their quality of life.
In our P&O profession, the people that get into it, they genuinely care about other people, and I think that's a big plus right there. And one of the biggest misconceptions, I think people think that we just make people arms or legs or give them a brace. We just deliver a product, and to me it's just really disheartening to hear something like that, because you develop such great relationships with your patients. And I think the colleges and the universities are really preparing the students very, very well right now. And there's so much interest in research in our field. And I think it's really good that you have the chance to do a lot of research projects and things yourselves. And with that, I think the future of prosthetics and orthotics is going to be amazing. To me, it's not just doing my job, it's just getting into it. I love it. After all these years, it's just one of the best things, and I'm so happy that I picked this field over other fields.
It's exciting to be a part of this field at a time where there's so much change and so much new technologies coming out, and so it'd be exciting to see where this field is going to head in the future, and it's cool to be a part of.
With the laughing for 10 minutes.
Once.
Oh, we're in this video.
Yeah, this looks good. We're good.
Okay.
If you want one of these, I'll sell it to you.
What's that? As a technical.
So,
see that on camera.
All right, thanks, Darren. Okay, so in the video, you would have seen that prosthetists and orthotists design custom orthopedic devices, and they provide lifelong treatment to those who need those type of devices. Prosthetists work with those who have experienced limb loss, limb loss, and orthotists work with those who have some sort of an injury or pathology that requires a bracing or support. And as you also saw in the video, it's pretty rewarding, and you get to make a difference in somebody's life. And every day is new and fresh and exciting and challenging. Most of you probably know who this guy is in this image. It's Terry Fox, who is a hero to Canadians for the impact that he made related to cancer awareness. But he's also a local hero here to those in the prosthetics and orthotics profession because of how he did it. Terry ran across Canada using a prosthetic leg, one that was actually designed and fabricated here in Vancouver. And although quite dated technology now, our profession helped play a significant role in his life and enabled him to run all that way. We have the amazing opportunity to help patients just like Terry to achieve their goals and return to functional life by providing prosthetic and orthotic treatment to them. Next slide. So a few fun facts about our program. It's a combination of art and science. So we get to work with our hands, we get to work with people, and it is truly a combination of taking the available science that we have and technology and being artistic with it and designing something that integrates into somebody's body and into their life. We build really lifelong relationships with our patients. I've worked with people, everything from 6 months old to seniors and everywhere in between. And we do get to definitely work with them as they progress through different areas of their life, different goals, different aspects, and it is really amazing. We get to apply an understanding of pathology, biomechanics, material science, and anatomy physiology. So quite a broad range of topics and fields that kind of combine into what we do. And it's constantly evolving as a profession with new innovation and technology and research coming through all the time. Next slide, please. So a few highlights about our program. So it is a 2-year program with the summer off in between. So 4 terms make up that 2 years. We take 12 students in a cohort every 2 years. So our program does not run a year 1 and a year 2. We take in students in the even years. So our next intake will be in 2022, September 2022. We have, as you saw in the video, we also have weekly clinical rotations as part of our program. So our students will travel across the Lower Mainland to see a variety of prosthetic and orthotic clinics to gain some exposure, and also to see a variety of allied healthcare providers like physios, physiotherapists, physiatrists, and occupational therapists, a variety of different rehab settings, things like that. We also have 2 placements where students will independently find a site that they'd like to gain some experience at and do some networking at, and they're able to do one in prosthetics and one in orthotics. And that happens, the first one happens in year 1 and the second one in year 2. And that's quite valuable for our students to get out into an actual clinic and start learning or using the skills that they've learned in practice. We also have a capstone research project that our students are involved in that spans over the entire 2 years, everything from inception of an original idea to looking through current literature related to it, and then conducting that original research and presenting it in a fun way back to the local community and their classmates and their family and friends. And students usually find this quite rewarding as well. We also have a optional co-enrollment in the McMaster University's Master of Rehabilitation Sciences program. And if you have any further questions about that, I'm happy to answer that. It meshes well with our program in some higher level learning. And so I would be happy to chat with you about that. About half of our students typically co-enroll in that program as well. This time around, not as many because they're all already doing some online learning for our program more so than they normally would. And so we don't have as high an enrollment or co-enrollment this time around as typically. Next slide, please. So as far as what our grads are doing once they graduate, so after graduation, as you heard in the video, our students will independently find a 2-year paid residency anywhere in Canada. So they have to work underneath a certified clinician in prosthetics or orthotics. They choose one discipline. They can eventually become dual certified, but they start in one. Then they write a national certification exam, and given that they pass, they then become a certified prosthetist or orthotist. Clinicians work either in a private clinic or in a hospital setting, is where you'll find people like us. And it could be a small remote clinic with an independent clinician, or it could be a very busy clinic in the city with many colleagues, a variety of people working in that clinic, or maybe even you could own your own clinic one day. So a variety of different settings or possibilities in this profession. And as I mentioned, you can practice in prosthetics or orthotics, or become dual certified in both. Residency salaries typically range between $52,000 and $55,000 per year, and certified prosthetist or orthotist salaries usually range between $55,000 up to as much as $105,000, or even more if you are a business owner. Next slide, please. So here's just a few pictures that show you a little bit about some of our grads in action, and a little bit about what a day in the life of someone in our profession might do. So starting on the left-hand side, you have one of our graduates who's performing an assessment on a patient. So this might involve physical assessment, looking at strength, range of motion, performing an assessment of their affected limb, and maybe even non-affected limbs as well. So an important aspect of our role is to perform a thorough physical assessment to have a good understanding of that patient's physical presentation, but also their history and any other important factors, their goals, their interests, their activities, what they do for work. It also plays into the design of our device. In the second picture there, we have another one of our grads who is taking an impression of the person's affected limb. So this could be using a variety of materials or methods, could be plaster, could be fiberglass, or we also you will use a 3D digital scanner to acquire that shape digitally and then work on it in a computerized setting. And then it's not a matter of just taking a copy and then making the device out of that copy of the limb, but we do need to manipulate that shape. So we have to have a good understanding of the person's anatomy and their body and what our goals are for the device. So in that third picture there, we have one of our grads who is manipulating the shape of the device. So he's using a variety of tools to take off some material, potentially add some pressure in pressure tolerant areas, and maybe add some material in pressure intolerant areas to make a very comfortable and functional device. And then in the last picture, you have someone who is going through a fitting procedure with the device, the finished device. And this involves everything from kind of optimizing the fit of the device, having the patient walk on it, understanding their biomechanics and adapting the device to change how that person might walk, and kind of going through all of the different aspects of making that device as best as it possibly can be for that particular patient. So what we do is very custom. We never do the same thing twice or the same thing for two different people. All right, and that's a wrap, I think, for me.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lauren. Now we'll turn to Maninder for program advising. Thank you, Maninder.
Great, thanks, Darren, and thanks, Lauren. That was quite interesting. There's some things I've learned and I was actually surprised that I never thought about how you're part of a patient's, for some patients, from sort of start to beginning for quite some time, and how important, of course, those interpersonal skills will be when you're seeing students, sorry, not students, but patients from a very young age into maturity as well. So I'm going to go over the application and admissions process for you, and then end off with giving you some information on student services. I see there's some questions that have come up regarding the admissions requirements, so hopefully we'll address them during this component of the session. And if they're not, you'll have an opportunity to ask those questions later on as well. Next slide, please. So we've got sort of two sets of requirements. We have our formal entrance requirements in the first column and our preferred requirements in the second column. So I'm going to do a quick overview of the formal entrance requirements which you must fulfill to be considered for the program. So when respects to English, there's two parts to this requirement. There's a speaking and listening component and a reading and writing component. To fulfill the speaking and listening component, it could have been studies you've completed in an English-speaking country. So if most of your education was in an English-speaking country, you likely fulfill this requirement. If you don't, there are options available. There are tests such as IELTS, TOEFL, BCIT assessment exams that you can write to fulfill this requirement. So there's lots of information about this particular requirement on our website, and you can get in touch with us for further information. The second part is an academic requirement of English 12. This can be met with a grade 12 English from high school or with a 3-credit post-secondary course as listed for English, humanities, or social science. Now, if you studied in a country that was not English speaking, you couldn't use a post-secondary course from your degree. You would have to write an exam. So we do have exams available for this particular requirement as well. So you can write an exam for speaking, listening, and reading and writing, or for only one or the other if you're just missing one in particular. The bachelor's degree can be in any field. I think I saw a question where somebody was asking if their bachelor's degree would be something that they could be considered with. So it could be in any particular field. The department welcomes applications from a wide variety of backgrounds. What you need to focus on here is the preferred requirement. So if we move over to the next column here, so if your bachelor's degree was in a field where you didn't take some of the courses we've listed here, in human anatomy and physiology, post-secondary physics, statistics, psychology, and possibly chemistry and post-secondary or grade 12, these are the types of courses you need to consider to take to be a strong applicant for the program. So when it comes to shortlisting, the department would be looking at applicants who have taken these types of courses in addition to their bachelor's degree or as part of their bachelor's degree. There's also what's called a CASPER test. This is not a BCIT test. It's a test used by many organizations and educational institutions for acceptance into their health programs. This is an online test. There is a lot of information on the CASPER site about the test. There's even information on how you can prepare for the test, some sample questions available as well. I highly encourage you to go to their site. It is hyperlinked from our entrance requirements page, and start reviewing what you need to do to prepare for the test so that you're quite comfortable when the time comes to write the exam. There are dates which are not posted yet, but when application opens for this program, the dates will be posted for this particular program of when you can write the exam and when the last day for writing the CASPER exam will be. And then the final part is a mandatory, I shouldn't say final, I mean, there's really no steps in which you need to do these requirements, but there's also what's called a mandatory applicant questionnaire. This is a questionnaire that you need to fill out. It'll ask you questions about your background, about work experience, why you're choosing the program. One of the tips I'd like to give you is that please don't copy and paste from another document into this form. Type directly into this form. There's specific characters for each box and you can't expand the boxes. What they're looking for, some things that you would like to highlight would be your leadership and teaching skills, demonstrate that you can work with different types of people with diverse backgrounds, different demographics and age as well, and provide some examples of what you have done. So give them examples of interactions with others, maybe working with people with disability, whether that's volunteer work or work experience. Next slide, please. So to give you an idea of a successful applicant profile, so Lauren had mentioned earlier that there were 12 seats available typically in this program. So as you can imagine, it is very competitive. We have about 32 students that are in this session today watching. So you can imagine the ratio of application to seats is quite high. So you do want to focus on the preferred requirements and some of the items that we have listed here under successful applicant profile. One of the questions we quite often get for these types of programs is, what is the recommended GPA, or what has been the most successful GPA? So the most successful applicants have a GPA of 3.25 or higher as listed here. Well, what we like to let students know is that GPA is just one factor of the selection process. It is not the only factor of the selection process. They're looking for well-rounded students who have not only shown to us that they can succeed academically, but through their volunteering work experience, that they also have the other skills that we're looking for. So, for example, good interpersonal skills. In the video that you were able to see, and in some of the information Lauren provided, you have been given great examples of all the different types of people that you'll be working with, the different age groups, people with, of course, disabilities, and some very sensitive issues that will come up. So having great interpersonal skills will be very important. This is why one of the last things we have listed here is the patient, professional, and maturity is quite important as well. And as you can imagine, with a combination of sciences and engineering and manual dexterity, the ability to visualize in 3D, and being a problem solver is also very important. And perhaps, Lauren, you could speak to this later on, or if there's something you'd like to add now, you're more than welcome to.
Maybe I can add something a little bit later, if that's okay.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. Actually, sorry, before I just want to mention, so some of you may be wondering how you can get this experience. So volunteer or paid experience involving direct interaction with people with cognitive, emotional, or physical disabilities. So this could be volunteering. And I know it's difficult right now to get many of these volunteering opportunities, so try your best. Some of them may still exist, but some examples we have from the past are volunteering at a wheelchair basketball, special events, at a camp, rehabilitation settings. If it's possible to get in some kind of clinic, that's also acceptable as well. Preference is given to those that have this experience within the last 5 years. Next slide, Terry. So just to wrap up the application admissions process, you at this moment can't go online and have a look at the application, but once applications open October 1st for September of 2022, you can have a look at the online application and you can start filling it out. As long as you don't pay the application and submit, you can come back to it and work at it at your own pace until you're ready to submit the application. The online application is actually very easy. It's a very sort of straightforward process. Some of the things you have to do is really what you have to do before actually submitting the application. So that is getting all your official transcripts, converting them into PDF files. We've provided information on our website on how you can do that. Fill out the mandatory applicant questionnaire and complete the CASPER exam. Once you've done all of that, you would submit your application. There'll be a deadline date by which you can apply. For this program, because it is a competitive entry process, it doesn't really matter the date you apply. That won't have an impact on your application. It's just important to have it in prior to the deadline date. Once you've submitted your application, it will go to our admissions department and they will ensure you meet all the minimum entrance requirements. From there, it will move to the department for another assessments, and this is where the department will shortlist the best candidates out of the group of students who have applied. And after that, they will make their final decision. Next slide, please. That was the academic part. Now we're just going to move forward to the student services that we have available to you at BCIT. We have many services available. We apply the 8 dimensions towards your well-being. So we have something available for all of these areas. Some of these are services that you will have access to once you are a student at BCIT. But what we wanted to let you know today, that there are some services that you may be interested in knowing as a prospective student. So one is our financial aid and awards department. If you have any questions about student loans, any questions about the awards, bursaries, and scholarships that may be available to you, I encourage you first to go to their webpage. There's lots of information there. And then if for any questions, you can call them or send them an email. We also have an accessibility services department on campus for any student that may require assistance for the time they're at BCIT. So you do need to be able to meet the requirements, be accepted into the program. And if you're able to do that, we will be able to accommodate any type of temporary or permanent disability you may have during your studies. And then the third service I'd like to highlight is our BCIT Indigenous Services Department. They are here to ensure a smooth transition for Indigenous students in first year and beyond. They offer a peer-to-peer mentorship program to assist the students during their studies. They also have information on or can help you with Indigenous funding as well. They offer a great welcoming place, or what's called a gathering place, not only for Indigenous students, but for all students during their studies. Of course, this is closed right now, so it's not open at the moment, but once we're back to campus, it's something that you can come and check out. Next slide, please. So if you have questions about some of the requirements, particularly the English requirement, if your degree, if you need to do an evaluation, so it's an ICES evaluation, which is called International Credential Evaluation. I should have mentioned early on, if your degree was completed outside of Canada, the US, UK, Australia, and New Zealand, you will have to complete what's called a comprehensive ICES evaluation. If you already have done something similar to that at an organization such as WES or IQAS, those are acceptable as well. But if you have any questions regarding that, you can contact us. And then I believe we're going to give Lauren's information later on, and he'll be available for questions regarding the program as well. So if there's a time-sensitive question, I recommend you give us a call, because by email, it may take us a few days to respond to you. However, there's the option to send us an email or even request a Zoom appointment if that's required. So if you're not already, I highly encourage you to start following BCIT Health Services on the social media platforms listed here. This is your opportunity to learn more about BCIT and your field of interest. There's some great stories that are regularly shared about our students, students on campus, students in the industry. These platforms really help you to make an informed decision about BCIT and the career that you would like to choose. And some of the other options listed in the second column here, unfortunately, they're not available at the moment. But once we are back to campus, there may be opportunities for you to do what's called spend a day, where you get to spend half a day in a program, or even come to our campus for a tour as well. Next slide. Great, so that ends the formal part of our presentation. I'm going to move it over to Darren, and then we'll be able to respond to some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maninder and Lauren. Now, I've not been watching the chat very well, and I'm wondering if our talented and lovely Erin would help us out.
Well, thank you for that compliment. Now I have to. Okay, so yeah, we've had a few questions in the chat. I want to thank everyone who's putting questions in there. The first one that I wanted to read out that I'm hoping that Lauren can answer, it's any advice for prospective students who are trying to get experience exposure despite the situation we're in with COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've had that one come up a couple times already. So certainly it is important to consider that in reaching out to prosthetic and orthotic clinics to shadow or potentially do things that you once used to do, may be a little bit different now. So clinics may be looking at minimizing additional bodies in their areas, or maybe in their treatment rooms are quite small, and the idea of having somebody come in to shadow for the day may be challenging for a clinic to accommodate. So what I would say is that there's still lots of time. So hopefully our situation will change, and such that in the future you will have the ability to go into a clinic setting and actually see what it's all about in that clinic setting. I'd also encourage you to just reach out and see what happens anyway. There are many clinics that are operating similarly, but that are still operating in a similar way. And so they may be comfortable with you coming in and chatting with them and seeing their environment. So do reach out and see what happens. And it may just be a wait and see in the next 6 months to a year, and they may be able to accommodate you later. But and you can find those resources or those clinics a couple different ways. One would be just Google prosthetic or orthotic clinics, and you'll see a whole bunch of clinics that will come up. Another way would be through one of our professional organizations where specific clinics are listed. One of those would be our provincial organization, which is POABC. I can type it in the chat in a few minutes. That's Prosthetic and Orthotic Association of BC, not to be mistaken by the Plumbers Association of BC, which is also POABC. And there's a list of participating clinics on that website. Secondly would be our national organization, which is Orthotics, Prosthetics Canada, or OPC. And there's also a list of clinics and clinicians on that site as well. So a couple different areas where you can potentially reach out to gain some experience. And if I can just build on that question a little bit longer, so I've already been talking a fair bit, but I do highly encourage that you reach out and find out more about our program and about our profession before you apply. It is really important that you know what you're getting into. Our profession is very specialized. We teach you how to be a great clinician in prosthetics and orthotics, and those are pretty specific skills. And we hope that you love it as much as I love it. And so we want to make sure that it's a good fit for you. And I'm sure you want to make sure it's a good fit for you if you're going to invest 2 years into a program and potentially longer into a residency as well. So do make sure that you do your homework. Go check out some clinics, see what it's like to be in a day in the life of a prosthetist or an orthotist before you apply.
Great, thank you, Lauren. I just wanted to, as a side note, thank Nicolette, who is answering somebody's question in the chat here and giving some great answers about biomedical engineering as well. So thank you for that. They are very different disciplines, and this is a degree program where biomed is a diploma as well as the differences in what they actually do. But another question here for you, Lauren, is there an interview portion of the application process?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Historically, we have had an MMI as part of our intake process. The last time around for this current cohort that we had to change our typical process because of COVID protocols, but usually we would have an MMI in each of the provinces at one site, and they would take place over the course of about a week. And the MMIs would look at a variety of kind of situational questions, as well as assessing your manual dexterity and spatial skills, things like that. We'll have to be looking at kind of when we get closer what that situation is like. We did include the Casper this time around instead. That's likely to stick around, is that Casper assessment. But we may or may not decide to reintroduce the MMI as we have had in the past. So still to come on that one.
Just a note for people who aren't in the know, MMI stands for multiple mini interview.
Thanks, Erin.
Now, another good question here from Kelsey or Kelsia. Are there any major differences between the BCIT program and the one at George Brown?
That's a great question as well. So as I'm sure you've already realized that there's 2 programs in Canada that are accredited, one here in BC and one in Toronto called George Brown College. There are, I guess, some differences between us. We are both accredited schools, so we follow the same protocols and minimum requirements. I would say that a few different aspects. They take 8 students per year from anywhere across Canada. And so they have a cohort of year 1 and year 2, whereas we have one cohort that goes through the program before we take another cohort, and we take 12 students at a time. So a little bit of different intake process. We also, our program switches back and forth between prosthetics and orthotics during our sessions. Or during our terms. So you will learn about one aspect, and then we switch back and forth between those 2, whereas George Brown, typically you're learning prosthetics and orthotics simultaneously through your program. Another main difference is that we have a variety of other schools or other professionals in their areas that teach into our program. So all of the other courses that are outside of just our primary prosthetics and orthotics courses are taught by experts in those areas. So your anatomy, physiology, social sciences, patient care, everything like that is all taught by professionals in those areas. So I think that's something that sets our program apart as well. I'm sure there's many more aspects that are different between us, but there's a short list anyway to start off with.
Thanks, Lauren. Krista is asking, does the master's program that you mentioned add on to the degree length, and what would the additional costs be? Are there additional costs? Sorry.
Yeah, so the The McMaster program, depending on when you might start it, it does require a separate application, so you're not automatically enrolled just because you choose to do so. So you do need to apply to their program as well. Typically, most applicants who are successful at getting into our program will also be successful at getting into the McMaster program with a similar profile. And if they start at the same time, so if they're starting both our program and the McMaster program simultaneously in September 2022, let's say, their program is 8 terms. So if you were to work your way through it one course at a time, which usually we recommend, any more than one at a time can be quite a bit, then you would be 6 courses completed by the time you are complete, by the time you complete our program. And so you'd still have a couple more courses remaining to take after the end of your program at BCIT. And tuition, tuition-wise, it would be, as far as what I recall, I took the master's program myself, and it was fairly similar tuition to the BCIT tuition. But if you wanted more specific numbers, you can access that on the McMaster website.
Great. Lots of good questions from you guys. You guys have done your research. Nicolette is wondering if this is typically a full-time job, or are you able to choose your hours? And are P&Os self-employed usually, or employed by a health authority?
Okay. So I guess the first question was, can you repeat that one again?
Full-time or choosing your hours?
Right. So typically, I would say it's usually going to be a full-time profession. Most prosthetists and orthotists will work a full work week. That being said, some clinics offer some flexibility, like maybe a longer 4-day week, or potentially some flexible hours. But usually, it's in an effort to cater to the clientele and the patients that we work with. And so we typically work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and usually clinics will want to have their clinicians available during all those times so that they can be available to a variety of times when patients might want to come in. So usually Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 kind of hours. It's pretty rare that people in our profession work evenings or weekends.
And are they normally employed, self-employed, or employed by a health authority? You mentioned a clinic. Are the clinics independent or health authority?
Yeah, so it's very different depending on which area you're looking at. BC, for example, is nearly all private clinics outside of a few major hospitals like Victoria or Kamloops or Kelowna. So in BC, for example, it's mostly private clinics that you would be working within, or potentially starting your own business or purchasing a business down the line. Whereas other areas like Saskatchewan, for example, it is primarily only in a health authority, like one of the major 2 hospitals in Saskatchewan.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I mean, there's a lot of good questions coming in, and it's very popular, but we have gone over time. I have put up on the screen Lauren's email address. So if you have program-specific questions that didn't get answered today, I'm sure Lauren will be more than happy to answer them for you if you shoot them an email. And also, if it's more admissions related or very personal, you might want to contact program_advising@bcit.ca, and someone would be more than happy to help you. And of course, on the Prosthetics and Orthotics webpage on the BCIT site, there's a fact page, which probably will answer a lot of questions that you may have if you hadn't checked that out already. So I'm going to have to wrap this up and thank Lauren and Maninder and Aaron for their great help. And I hope everyone learned something in this very interesting and helpful course. And we're going to have to wrap it up for the night. I'll say thank you very much. I'll let everyone know that a copy of the slide presentation will be sent out probably tomorrow afternoon. And hopefully early next week, we'll also have information session videos up on YouTube that we'll send a link to you as well. So with that, I want to thank you all for being with us today and wish you all the best with your future in health sciences. Thank you again for showing up.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.